Thank you. Something about cell phones and forms. All right, let's start. All right, so my name is Itay Keren. I'm the owner of Untame and the creator of a game called Mushroom 11. Mushroom 11 is a game about destruction and growth. And the only way you can move is by destroying your own cells. The game was released in October on Steam, GOG, and Humble. And we're going to talk a little bit about the design of the puzzles. All right, quick background. Game started in 2012 at the Global Game Jam at NYU. The theme was the Ouroboros, which is the snake eating its tail. I was thinking about a 2D creature that has a set of cells, and you remove the cells, they immediately regrow, so you have this cycle of destruction and growth. I called it Pixel Blob, and quickly changed it to Mushroom 11, which is a whole story in itself. This is how the game looked after 48 hours. It clearly had something interesting going for it, although it was very slow and clunky. And even though it was presented in this very naive layout, I recreated this layout just for the purpose of this talk. And I was trying to think, what are the reasoning for me to just put this layout? And this is basically the default layout. I can clearly see Mario here, and what would Mario do in this case? You could either slide or jump over the gap. And then, I just put this interesting mechanics on it, and even though I really didn't give any attention to the layout already, even though you don't have any jump, you could do a bunch of different and interesting things, like use the freeform pruning and the split and the reattachment, and the fact that you have this cellular level persistence of the physics to go over all sorts of obstacles. You can use the rigid skeleton to grip and conform to a terrain. You can use the idea that you can regenerate from even one cell, which kind of opens the idea of sacrificing. You can destroy the cells, but as long as you have even one, then you're good to go to cross all sorts of obstacles. The idea that you can shape your set of cells in any way gives you unlimited shape and extent, but it also shifts the center of mass, which opens up a whole source of interesting behaviors and physical effects like gyration, tumbling, and momentum. So, but yeah, the risk was that I have this interesting mechanics, but it's presented in this familiar package. So it took me the longest time to kind of try to figure out what this game is about. I call it the anti-platformer, which represents the mental leap that I had to go through to kind of understand what's the nature of this behavior and what does it mean, what does the mechanic mean, what does it need to have. Also, it also stands for the idea that the main weapon for any platform, which is jumping, is completely absent from the vocabulary of this mechanic. A couple of words on the mechanics design. So one of the first thing I did was to eliminate growback. So as you remove cells, they immediately change the probability for regrowth where you removed it. So it kind of perpetuates the growth away from the cursor, allowing you more control over where you're going. Another thing is that this game is not about walking. It's not a walking simulator, which means that it's not just one button or a joystick. There's a lot of attention into just moving. So making this enhanced gyration and allowing you to tumble forward gives you this opportunity to make this much more enjoyable, even this very, very basic motion, which is very important. The idea of eliminating the mid-air growth, something that's kind of controversial in my own mind. The fact that you can't grow in mid-air allows you to control your own size, and by that you control your own weight. Also, if I did allow mid-air growth, it means that you can kind of eliminate the purity of the puzzles by just flying over some of the obstacles. So this was eliminated. So I'll talk about that further. And they have the idea of using the size. And the smaller the mushroom, the bigger it tries to grow back to its original size, which means that if you keep it really small, it grows really fast. You can walk really fast, but your size is super small, so you have very small surface area, so you have less control. So you have this interesting speed-control trade-off, and if you have a trade-off, you have a game. And you have So you have this unlimited growth, which is something that took me a bit to reach. For a long time, I had this energy bar, and you would pick up these creatures and gain energy, and you use their energy to regrow. But then I realized that I was actually punishing the players for doing the one thing that they enjoy the most. So quickly I just completely split it, and people ask me what the creatures are. Well, now you know, they're just for points, and the growth is completely unlimited. And the idea of going from right to left. If you played this game in 2012 or 2013, you know that this is actually designed for tablets. And if you try to play this game on a tablet, you realize that as you go from left to right, your hand is in the way of anything that's coming towards you. So I just thought, why not just make it from right to left? I mean, I'm talking about right-handed, who are the grand majority, sorry, lefties. But then it's like the question is, so why are all the platformers go from left to right? So I had this interesting discussion, and it went through, Western languages with ink being smudged if you would go from right to left, and then the Cartesian coordinate system, and then maybe some lazy developer trying to use unsigned integer to avoid going negative. Anyway, so why not use power-ups? I've been thinking about that a lot. I had a lot of attempts. Why not have it bigger, go lighter, faster, invincible? So yeah, I decided to not go there at all because it took me the longest time to figure out the parameters of the growth, the speed, the number of cells, the weight, all these things took the longest time to find that sweet spot. If it was too small, you couldn't reach some of the obstacles. If it was too big, you have a lot of things to pay attention to, and everything grows. So if you leave something behind, it grows. So that actually makes kind of no sense. It's not an advantage to have more cells necessarily. And also the idea of invincibility. What does it even mean when the main control is to destroy your own cells? So all these things kind of made no sense. So I decided at some point that the mechanics is going to stay the same, and the entire mechanics is going to be built into the environment. The environment is the mechanics. If you keep minimal character features and versatile environment, you end up with a rich experience. Also, I was stupid enough to submit the game even back in 2012 to a festival, and while I did get in, one of the jurors told me, "I'm concerned that there isn't much more to be explored with this mechanic." Challenge accepted. All right, so the next few years I was going with my trusted sketchbook everywhere, as you probably noticed, and had a bunch of ideas. I immediately tried to implement them. And I came up with this set of puzzle mission statements. Create environments that challenge the mechanics. Experiment with as many environments and derived mechanics as possible. And granted, this is completely personal. This is a personal challenge that I put for myself to dig deep into this mechanic and figure out what I can do with it. I don't think that a game is complete when every single path is explored. Build on and combine mechanics, challenging logic and skill. And following the core unpredictable nature of the mechanics, encourage exploration and open solutions. And make every challenge unique to Mushroom 11. Even this puzzle here is, well, we've all seen platforms in platformers, but this is almost like a backwards, ironic implementation of those platforms. Now, as for the goal design, this is another thing that I took this decision very early on, to have a linear and consequential progression. Even the side tracks are kind of like just right on the main path, so you can just go and explore a little more. For me, it was a matter of mastery, just figuring out a lot of the puzzles or ideas are based on each other, and it was important for me to have the players being primed by learning all these different vocabulary pieces and just continuing from there. And also, since I'm kind of the product of the 90s, this is the kind of games that I liked to play as a kid, so I really enjoyed those. As for even the story is told in a completely passive way, in using background images in order to not interrupt that flow. So that was a completely conscious decision. All right, let's go quickly through some of the puzzle systems. So even walking in Mushroom 11 is quite a challenge, so just understanding the fundamentals of control. Once you understand those, you can go and start mastering those basic control when things are starting to move under your feet. You have some time pressure. If you go into the idea of balance and this changing center of mass, you have unstable foundation, all of a sudden open up a bunch of new ideas. Excuse. Come on. Sorry. Yay. By changing your balance and changing your center of mass, you also change the environment in some way. You use your friction, the fact that you gain some momentum, you can apply that momentum on objects on the scene. Also, you can apply that balance on other objects, and those objects in turn have different interaction with the environment by themselves. So that's another family of challenges. Splitting, another one of the core elements of Mushroom 11. Clearly, the fact that you have distributed growth, the number of cells stays the same, but you can cut it to any number of pieces with no loss of mass. But as you do so, you have some sort of attention management. You have a few pieces. You need to pay attention to each one of them, but each one of them can be assigned with a different task. So that opens up, well, a bunch of the ideas in Mushroom 11 come from that. And also you can have the environment split it for you, enabling a bunch of interesting and at least visually interesting ideas as well. The structure of Mushroom 11, you can use it to conform and grip onto objects and use it to progress further into the level in various ways. The structure itself can sustain any physical forces of gravity and other centrifugal forces and momentum and all that. And it's even strong enough to sustain forces applied by other objects. So you can use it to stop other machines and whatnot. Shape. Well, clearly one of the things you want to do is try to shape a certain silhouette as given by whatever. In this case, we've used the shape sensors, which is an entire discussion I could talk about. What did I do? All right. But more interestingly, you can use your shape to change the environment, or in some way become the solution. You become a tool, this dynamic tool in the environment that you can perpetually change and align to the environment. A quick word on the physics. The physics of shape-shifting, it seems very natural to us now. If you think about it, if you change the center of mass, it means that you expect a negative force to compensate for that change. And we don't have that in Mushroom 11. In fact, there is no consequences at all. We're avoiding the law of conservation of energy, and it feels very, very natural. But it also means that you have no force applied on the environment. So what do you do when you don't have a force on the environment? You need to find other ways of handling the environment and solving puzzles. It also means that you cannot grow. So you have to grow around objects. You can't grow into them. You don't have any force. So you kind of like slime in through cracks, and which is pretty much the idea of this fungal organism. It makes a lot of sense. That's the main reason why moving in tunnels is so satisfying. All right. So once you have physics. Any physical object combined with the fact that you have shape-shifting and splitting becomes interesting in any way you put it, and it's completely unpredictable in some cases. And the amount of things that you can do just by placing an arbitrary moving object with Mushroom is almost always fun. At least it's for me anyways. I enjoy it. So a lot of these puzzles just started with me putting stuff on the screen and seeing what happened. Add that to the fact that you have this cellular level persistence. Any cell has its own momentum, and that momentum is inherited even between splits and reattachments. We talked a little bit before about the changing mass, the fact that you have some control over your mass. So sometimes your weight combined with some momentum is the only way you can solve some puzzles. But in some cases, you would actually have to mitigate that changes in a way to keep yourself light. So using split and mass already looks a little different. And the fact that you have remote mass shifting, again, something that doesn't seem very intuitive, but once you play it, this is level 7, you kind of understand this intuitively, that you need to balance the seesaw while progressing one of the pieces towards the exit. Applying external forces, well, we've all seen wind in many platformers, but when you have a shapeshifter that reacts to the wind in different ways based on the shape, it already is interesting. There's, you use some turbulence, simulated turbulence here, and a bunch of other stuff, but basically this is just wind. And another little, a little change you have at the same level is the sticky walls, this plants. It's slightly similar to the wall climbing that we've seen before, but in this case, as you move away from the wall, the center of mass changes. It means that you need a bigger surface area to stay on the wall. So it's another little change that makes a lot of difference and other interesting flavor. And one of my favorite things is the water, allowing you to have all sorts of interesting effects. This unrestricted growth underwater, the fact that you can shift yourself underwater with no consequences allow you to do all sorts of things that obviously are not natural, but they are completely natural in the world of Mushroom 11. A couple of words about the hazards of Mushroom 11. First of all, fireballs, like almost every other game. I call them the slap on the wrist because they are pretty much just like your eraser. They remove cells. So they look very flashy and scary, but that's just because of what you know about fireballs. More interestingly, you have the acid infection that just spreads inside your body, and the only way you can heal yourself is by completely removing the infected area, which I think is a nice metaphor for the story of Mushroom 11, by the way. And the insta-death, not used a lot, but another interesting effect, allowing me to put some interesting obstacles later on in the game. The bosses, one of my favorite interesting opportunities in the game, probably the one thing that took me the longest time to develop. Every level ends with this ultimate test of acquired skills, things that you've learned through that level. This is kind of this perpetual procedural puzzle system that just behaves regardless of whether you're there or not. It just lives there, and then when you come into their chamber, interrupting their way of life, it's just a lot of fun just designing those things. And one of the things we were talking about, the consequential progression of the game, one thing that I don't necessarily enjoy in some games is the idea of key drop, that magically after you beat a boss, it has a key that you open a door and you magically teleport to someplace else. For me, it was very important to have some sort of consequence. You kill the boss because the boss is in your way to the next area. And sometimes you even use their corpse to progress to the next level. All right, puzzle types. Okay, so clearly you can use it to have some logical puzzles and a bunch of exploration and open solutions. This one's is a logical puzzle with a bunch of different solutions. One of the things that is important when you have open solutions is the idea of avoiding distractions. I call it the loose brick because if you have a loose brick, it probably means that you need to push it. Once the player feels that there's something in there, they're going to just stick to that solution and try it over and over again. So just make sure that when you have open solutions, then just don't make things that are taking away from that experience. And then you have all sorts of combination of skill, logic, and exploration, which basically is most of the puzzles in Mushroom 11. You get to see the entire all the elements in the puzzle. You try to figure out what to do, and then you still have some hard time using your own unpredictable nature of character to get through. All the way to 100% skill-based puzzles. Timing-based, precision-based, basically taking something from the general platformer world and putting it in the world of Mushroom 11, and I'm going to talk about that puzzle in a moment. All right, which brings me to what went well. This is a mid-mortem because clearly I'm working on the tablet version, mobile tablet version of Mushroom 11, so trying to look back, see what happened. What went well? The game got great reviews, a bunch of Game of the Year awards, best platform of the year, but that really doesn't mean much. What is important to me is the depth and detail that I think I got into this game, with environments, the art, the story, the music, the audio, and the technology. I think I'm very proud of what we achieved. The variety of puzzle systems, the creatures, the bosses, and a lot of secrets, some of which are not yet discovered, by the way. The minimalism of the mechanics, clearly, and the storytelling, which is, a talk in itself. Teaching. I'm extremely proud in the way we give this novel mechanic to the players and slowly teach them, by the way, with the help of my co-designer, Julia, my wife, how to get through and understand it. Like every new obstacle is kind of taught, and you're primed through these things. So by the end of level 1 or 2, players already know how to use this mechanic. The challenge, clearly the game is very challenging. If you played it, you know what I mean. And the depth of emotion as a result. As someone said, I love Mushroom 11, I hate Mushroom 11, but I also love it. Which brings me to what could be improved. The difficulty curve. Clearly the game ramps up in the second half of the game. A lot of skill and time-based puzzles versus more slow exploration, logic-based puzzles. The length and the density of the later levels as well. I guess some of it is my ego. I found all these cool mechanics. I want to put all of them in. And, even the very basic game design elements that everybody knows, that you need to kind of have something, you challenge the player and then have some sort of relief. But all these things were so cool, I just wanted to put all of them for the enjoyment of the players. So it ended up really being long and very, very dense and very hard. Limited control, of course, the abundance of timing-based and vertically based and precision control that's required, and the idea of purity versus fun with no growth in mid-air. All these things kind of contribute to the idea of limited control. So limited control in some cases caused some frustration, clearly. And the idea of lingering defeat and lingering triumph, which is some interesting observation that I had recently, which brings me back to that puzzle that we've seen before, the 100% skill-based puzzle. This is actually the top RQ factor puzzle in the game. RQ stands for Rage Quit, by the way. So I have analytics for all the puzzles, and I have this list of all the puzzles that did well and did not as well. And the problems with this puzzle are pretty clear. It's a limited control based puzzle. It's timing based. It's precision. There's a lot of vertical motion. It's surrounded by other very, very hard puzzles as well. So there's not a lot of relief. And ultimately, it has the lingering defeat. If you fall off the platform, you have this long, excruciating wait until you hit the ground, and even then, you have some time to go back to where you were. So clearly that's something wrong with that specific puzzle, although this is all Julia's fault because it's her favorite puzzle. On the other hand, you have the lingering triumph. So after you beat the boss, there's this moment of that you want to just bask in the glory of winning. And instead, what Mushroom 11 does, because of that purity, is to introduce another small challenge to just go through, to physically go through to the next level, instead of just enjoying that moment of winning. Which reminded me of one of the biggest changes between Street Fighter 1 and Street Fighter 2, when they introduced this slow motion after you beat your opponent. So you have that lingering effect of like seeing yourself beating or getting beaten. So just that emotion is just much stronger, which kind of also reminded me of one of our least favorite games in the world, Monopoly, which is pretty much all based on lingering defeat and lingering triumph. Which reminds me, a quick takeaway on this whole thing. Test early and often. Everybody knows that my game was out on day 2. It tested often because we went to a bunch of events, so we showed it all the time. Diverse beta team. That's very, very important. I have a bunch of beta testers. They're all awesome. I love you all. You're probably here. But they're all really good players. They're fans of the game, and they're pretty much better than me. And if you see why some of the problems didn't surface, people wanted the game to be harder and more challenging. And so just make sure that you have a very diverse beta team. All right, so going forward to the tablet mobile version that I'm working on now. So featuring clearly touch-based, which is the original design, a shorter best of cut. And the reasons are we want to enable the modified puzzle selection as discussed, a better fit for the intended audience and expected price point, and tackle technical constraints like memory and performance and aspect ratio. A lot of these things kind of dictate a different selection of puzzles. And what we're doing now is obviously working on the difficulty curve, balancing skill, logic, and exploration, modifying, removing puzzles with limited and timing-based controls like the ones we've seen. Tweak the general control parameters. So some of these things, like the purity factor, is going to be altered a little bit, and maybe also in the Steam and this desktop game as well. As for the lingering defeat and triumph, modify some of the layouts, less punishing replay, and more checkpoints where needed. And ease the post-boss challenge or make it a bonus. We're experimenting with a couple of approaches. Constraints and capabilities of the device. So right to left for lefties. So we're thinking of doing a mirrored version just for lefties. And the 4:3 aspect ratio, it means that some puzzles are unfit. There's the idea of exposing all the elements in the puzzle in one screen, which is another discussion. But anyway, and the idea of multi-touch puzzles are now allowed. And a lot of puzzles I designed for multi-touch, and they couldn't be in because you only have one mouse. Imagine you have like a bridge of mushroom, and then you need to cut it with 2 fingers, so just the centerpiece just falls down. Anyway, so any ideas and any feedback is welcome. Thanks.